Good morning and welcome to this week's Reset for Life video. When my daughter was 18, she wanted to be able to take the car and go see her friends until all hours of the night. I said, "No, you need to be back by midnight." "Well, that's not fair, Dad," she replied. "I'm 18 and I'm an adult now." I said, "Okay, I'll tell you what. You don't have a curfew, but the car does. It has to be here by midnight." "Well, why?" she said. I said, "Because nothing good happens on the roads after midnight." My son Cam used to have a teacher who, when they were whining about something not being fair, the teacher would say to them, "Listen, life's tough, get a helmet." Even though we expect it to be, the truth is life is not fair. That's why my son Cam pays 3 times as much for car insurance as Megan does, even though he's never had an accident. It's because he's a male, and in my humble opinion, males are unfairly judged before they have an accident. We all have this sense of fairness in our lives, don't we? And when that fairness is threatened, we can become indignant. As we continue with our When God theme, today I want to talk to you about when God seems unfair. Now, I know that might seem like a concept that is shocking to some of you. I mean, of all things, shouldn't God, as God, be the most likely to be fair? We equate fairness with rightness, and if God is righteous or right, then He must also be fair. So when God offends our sense of justice and fairness, when we don't get that promotion at work, even though that we know that we are best suited for it, when God doesn't answer our prayers like He seems to answer everybody else's prayers, when good people seem to get sick, we need to be careful not to get jaded and turn our backs on God. We need to remember that God is a just God, and He is the one that determines what is right. We don't. We have to keep in mind that His ways are not always our ways, that He sees the master plan and the big picture, and that He doesn't always play by our rules. Where we interpret fairness by how it affects us or those that we love, God chooses to interpret a person's needs in light of eternity and not in light of what you and I think is fair. Sometimes God is actually quite unfair, and I'm grateful for it. Let me explain. Ephesians chapter 2 verses 4 and 5 says this, "But God, who is so rich in His mercy, and He loves us so much, that even though we were dead because of our sins, He gave us life when He raised Christ from the dead. It is only by God's grace that you have been saved." These verses introduce us to 2 very powerful attributes of God's character towards us. They are called grace and mercy. And frankly, neither of them is very fair. Think of it this way. Do you think that it would be fair if you and I were working at the exact same job, but I received a full day's worth of wages for only a half a day's worth of work? In God's kingdom, that's called grace, and it's undeserved favor. God extends this to us every day by offering us salvation from our sins, even though we didn't work to earn that favor. Secondly, do you think that it would be fair if I didn't receive a fine or jail sentence after crashing my car into yours while I was texting and driving? That's called mercy. And we experience it every day from God when He doesn't destroy us because of our sins. I am so thankful that God didn't get the memo that we want life to be fair. His unfairness towards us makes us prime candidates for grace and mercy. If we didn't have these, then none of us would have any hope for the future. None of us would ever experience the peace that comes from having our sins forgiven. None of us would ever know the security of being loved unconditionally. So when life doesn't seem fair, and when we want to blame God, I want you to remember 4 things. Number 1, remember that we should thank God. We should thank Him that we don't receive what we deserve. That's called mercy. We should also thank Him that we do receive what we don't deserve. That's called grace. Secondly, we have to remember that it could always be worse for us. It's important to thank God for what we do have without complaining for what we don't have. Some of us need a bit of an attitude adjustment in this area. We have so much, friends, and it's only because of our selfishness that we think that we deserve more. Thirdly, we have to remember that in the end, God is always a just God. Now, He may not always seem fair, but He is always just, and He will always do what is right by His standards, which are pure and holy and right. In order to do this, we have to remember one more thing. Fourthly, we need to remember to get back to trusting God again. We have to rely again on His omniscience, which means that He's all-knowing. We have to trust that He sees the bigger picture and is willing to do what is right, not what is fair, because fair according to our standards isn't always right according to God's standards. That's my Reset for Life word for today. God bless.